Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. The second half of this podcast, the stories are quite out there, quite aggressive today, but we'll do normal stuff in the front half. Wanted to catch up on some late night jokes that I liked. One from Jimmy Kimmel. The setup here, the indictment of Hunter Biden accuses Hunter of spending millions on drugs, escorts, and girlfriends, luxury hotels, rental properties, exotic cars, clothing, and other items of a personal nature. In short, everything but his taxes. Kimmel's joke: Hunter Biden is like the son Donald Trump never had. New topic from Jimmy Fallon. President Biden hosted Ukrainian President Zelensky at the White House. When he asked for money and support, Zelensky said, "Sorry, Joe, I got my own problem." That's a great joke. Cal Penn talking about the Dodgers signing Shohei Ohtani to a $700 million contract. Cal Penn said that's $1 for every minute it takes to watch one single baseball game. Trevor Noah's got a new special out December 19th. I am psyched for it. Let's listen to the trailer.
When I flew to Paris, my luggage was lost. I had to find somebody to help me. It's an older French gentleman, and he was wearing a red vest. And in French, it read information. And then underneath in English said information. I said, English, French? He said, English? Yeah, oui. I said, okay, could you help me, please? My luggage didn't arrive. I would like to know, what do I need to do? He's like, oh, the luggage didn't come. If you go for that one, maybe you can put you, because different flight airline can be put in different ones. You go to that one, you can be fine for you, because it's not the more different ones, because we are not in control with the airport, but these different ones they are put in for the airline, they are in control, so maybe you can see for that one. I was like, okay, all right, let's try French.
Netflix is going to have quite a run. Trevor on the 19th, Ricky Gervais Christmas, and Dave Chappelle New Year's Eve. That's awesome. I was watching Netflix, and they suggested, hey, want to watch Kevin Hart and Chris Rock? Not an absurd suggestion, Netflix. And I was like, I kind of don't. I don't know why. I'm not interested in this one. Jason Ziniman covers comedy for the New York Times, and he only wrote 2 paragraphs about it. So maybe his editor cut it down. Maybe the assignment desk was like, Jason, just give us 2 paragraphs. Or maybe Jason's not into it either. He wrote Kevin Hart and Chris Rock headliners only as a slick self-mythologizing, I don't know how to say that word, piece of Netflix content, I'm leaving it in, that follows the 2 comedians on the recent arena shows they teamed up on. It's aimed at comedy fans, even if much of it will be familiar to them. The story of how Eddie Murphy spotted Chris Rock at the comic strip and offered him a job on the sequel to Beverly Hills Cop has been told many times, and any stand-up fan on social media or listener to this podcast knows that Kevin Hart presented a goat to Chris Rock at the end of their recent MSG show. That doesn't mean there aren't reasons to watch, says Jason Ziniman. Did you see Netflix released, hey, here's what people are actually watching? They finally did that. And I was scrolling down and I wanted to see what the top comedy special was. I got 125 down on the list before I got bored looking. So then I went to the seek function and I typed in the words Chris Rock, and I found Chris Rock 497th. It was the 497th most watched thing on Netflix in the first 6 months of the year. That said, the things that were more watched have seasons, whereas a Chris Rock special was what, an hour? So if you're comparing that to, I don't know, Suits has a lot of hours and Chris Rock has 1 hour, that makes 36,200,000 hours viewed much more impressive. So that suggests lazy math here. If it had 36 million and change hours viewed and the special was about an hour, that means sort of kinda 36 million people checked out the special. That's pretty good. As a random comparison, the one thing that popped up in my mind, I was like, how many people watched the Seinfeld finale? That answer, 76 million. That 30 years ago when TV was much different. I think 36 million for a comedy special, very, very impressive. From the Daily Beast, George Santos says Jimmy Kimmel shortchanged him by more than $20,000 when Jimmy requested cameo videos that were later aired on late night television without his permission last week, and now he wants Jimmy Kimmel to pay up. Jimmy Kimmel had a segment called Will Santos Say It? He played clips of Santos addressing bizarre requests he and his staff made using pseudonyms, including one where Santos was asked to congratulate a Gary Fortuna on winning a beef eating contest in Florida. Santos told The Spectator World, that Kimmel's stunt may have violated Cameo's terms of service, adding he plans to take Jimmy Kimmel to court if he doesn't shell out for the clip's much higher business rates, since they weren't requested for personal use. Santos says his total invoice to Kimmel, not including the $2,000 already paid for the 4 videos, is $21,800 and change. That account amounts for the videos and a 50% business rush rate, according to The Spectator. Kimmel provided The Spectator with a statement which reads, "The idea that Mr. Santos would claim we shortchanged him and used credit card purchases improperly proves once and for all that the man's a comedy genius." Steph Tolev told the Toronto Star she knew when she had made it. She looked out in the crowd. There were 8 women. They were part of a bachelorette party, but instead of wearing tiaras and sashes, they were dressed in rompers and supporting mullet wigs. Steph said, "That was crazy," as jumpsuits, rompers, and curly, dark, long-in-the-back hair are Steph Tolev's signature look. Steph said, "That was crazy. I kind of have imposter syndrome, so part of me was thinking, what are you doing? Why would you want this? But it was strange and kind of nice. At times I still think, what's going on?" Last year, she opened for Bill Burr at Toronto's 20,000-seat Scotiabank Arena. She said, "Scotiabank felt like an out-of-body experience. I got there and it felt like a simulation. I started doing crowd work, but it's hard in a place like that. And then I looked off to the side and saw my dad and sister just glowing. And then I saw Bill Burr watching me and laughing, and it brought me back to reality for a second. I felt more nervous for those people than myself." Before that, she was hanging out on her couch, promoting her local shows on social media, making fun of New Yorkers. And then Bill Burr shared the video. She DM'd him and thanked him for sharing it, and he said, "Thanks for being hilarious." And then he asked if I'd ever want to open on the road for him. I seriously thought I was being pranked. About a month later, Tolev's manager called and said Burr had specifically asked for her to be in his new Netflix special. He had told Netflix the request was non-negotiable. Wow. That special is Bill Burr Presents Friends Who Kill. That changed things. Steph says, "I was already getting some headlining weekends at American clubs, but that special just took things to a whole new level. Clubs were banging on my agent's door trying to get me spots." Nate Bargatzi was on the Manningcast Monday night, and people didn't like it, apparently. I didn't even realize it was a Manningcast because for some reason Monday Night Football had 2 simultaneous games. I have YouTube TV, and they had a channel option that let you watch both games simultaneously, so I didn't go channel surfing at all. I didn't even know there was a Manningcast Monday night. And I guess Nate brought along his father, who's a magician. Some of the social media comments, "I don't know who Magic Man is on the Manningcast, but he's truly horrible," another viewer said. "Magic on Manningcast is an all-time flop." Kate Micucci announced she has lung cancer. You may know Kate from The Big Bang Theory or perhaps Garfunkel and Oates. She said, "The diagnosis was pretty weird. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. It was a surprise, but I also guess it happens." The American Cancer Society says that not everyone who's diagnosed with lung cancer has a history of smoking. Non-smokers can develop lung cancer from exposure to radon, secondhand smoke, air pollution, or other factors. That's scary. I'll tell you something I hadn't shared. So I had a little skin thing removed, and I've gotten the biopsy back, and everything is fine, but I've got a big scar on my arm now. But my reaction to it was like, all right, it's not crazy talk. If you know me, I'm always at the beach. I'm always out in the sun. So I wasn't like, what, me? And the example I was using, it wasn't like they told me, oh, you might have lung cancer because I don't smoke. I've never smoked, just like Kate. So it's just interesting to me that this actually happened to her. I hope she's doing okay. She shared a video and photo from her time in the hospital. You see her walking around in a medical gown, holding an IV pole while admiring the pretty nice artwork on the walls. At the end of the TikTok, she poses on her hospital bed with a small box of cereal, a banana, and a food tray. Really scary. Hope she's doing okay there. Vulture reviewed Maria Bamford's new special. If you're like, what Maria Bamford new special? Exactly. Comedy Dynamics released it as a thing you can buy. It's on Apple TV for $15. We seem to be in a little moment here where the Comedy Senti has decided Maria Bamford is awesome. Who was it last week was it Marin, that had Maria Bamford as the number 2 comedian of all time? Again, Maria's wonderful. We've seen her live, but number 2 all time? Seems a little high. But Vulture's on the train. They said at first glance, Maria Bamford's new special local act does not look much like the artistic statement of Purpose Comedy Special. Lacks the kind of sweeping statements about humor and humanity that tend to come with this mode. In scope and style, it doesn't have pretensions of grandeur, but Bamford isn't interested in broad claims by other comedians about what art should look like. All of it is charming, and all of it is unmistakably Maria Bamford, full of odd little sound effects, swallowed premises, and startling character voices that arrive and depart in seconds. Her physical performance is occasionally so broad that she literally pulls a face, and at another point falls into a whole-body collapse that punctuates her awareness of being a cliché. Her jokes are so fast and full of sound, it's as if they're being told by a one-woman band holding invisible instruments. Towards the beginning of the special, she jokes, "I'm a comedian as far as I'm concerned, but if I have to make a bunch of ladies at a nonprofit luncheon in Napa Valley laugh, Who books this crap? She pauses, then points to herself and says, I do. Heard from a couple listeners. I always enjoy hearing from listeners, so several ways you can do that. One, participate in the Facebook group, which is Daily Comedy News Podcast Group. You can email me directly. My email's in the show notes. I heard from Susanna, who wrote, huge comedy fan, and I love your podcast. It's the first thing I listen to every morning. I'm going to circle back to that comment in a few minutes. Please, please, please give Michael McIntyre some attention. His Netflix special, Showman, is by far and away the actual funniest, like sides hurting, tears streaming, laughing out loud that I think I've ever seen. I know he's a Brit, but honestly, so worthy of more recognition on this side of the pond. If you listen every day, I'm a fan of British comedy on the podcast. I tend to do that stuff in the back half or more on the weekend because, it's primarily an American audience. I get it. I love British comedy. So I will check out Michael McIntyre. He is off my radar. Thank you for the tip. The Guardian wrote about Michael McIntyre and said, you want 10 tight minutes on middle-aged wine drinking? McIntyre's your man. Interested in a riff on yawning? McIntyre's here for you. Itemizing the oddity of this universal human behavior, the comedy of failing to express it when in conversation, the incongruity of its seeming contagiousness. How do you catch tiredness? Not for the first time, you marvel that such an ostensibly banal observation can feel so fresh and deliver in McIntyre's expert hands. Such a substantial comic payload. Susanna, thank you for the note. Thank you for listening. And that special she is recommending is called Showman on Netflix. Also heard from P.S., who said, hey, Johnny, please take a moment to look at Pat Finnerty's YouTube channel. He does a series called What Makes This Song Stink? It's all in fun. He just released episode 8 about Jason Aldean, and it's insanely funny. I did that. I checked one out about Weezer's Beverly Hills. I'm a big Weezer fan. And in that video, Pat Finnerty mentions Duncan. I was like, all right, I could do this. Good tip there. Thank you for reaching out. Back to Susanna's comment about... It's the first thing I listen to every morning. That pleases me. A couple thoughts about the show here as I put it together. That's exactly what I'm going for. You can listen any time of the day, but I'm just trying to do a 10, 15. Today's going to be more like 20. Casual listen in the morning, easy on the ears. I keep it clean, trying to have a little fun. I was listening to another podcast, and it's hosted by a comedian, and 2 comedians were the guests, and they were going after somebody who I regularly quote on this podcast who reviews comedy, and they were just going after the guy, making fun of the idea of reviewing comedy. I thought it was a little unfair, and maybe I got a little sensitive to it. I'm like, will they think I'm stupid? But here's my deal. Some of you are going to be like, yeah, we know. But for the newer listeners, I ran SiriusXM Comedy for 10 years. After that, I started running the comedy properties for Slacker Radio, which is now called Live One Radio. As part of that, I started hosting a weekly show called The Weekly Comedy Thing. I still do that. I'll talk about that on Monday if I remember. I forgot this week. And off that, I wound up having all these extra stories. So I turned it into this podcast that you're listening to now. I'm not a comedian. I'm not a performer. I'm not trying to be funny. I'll throw in some dry wit that you may or may not like. You might think I'm stupid. That's cool. I don't mind. And my take on this, when I was running the comedy channel, especially at Sirius, people were like, well, you're not a comedian. You're not funny. And I'm like, well, I'm not a guitarist, but I can understand that a Rolling Stones record is good and schedule it in Music Master and play it on the rock station. It has nothing to do with whether or not I can play bass guitar. So specific to comedy, I think I know more about comedy than, say, 98.5% of the population of the United States. That said, the people that know more than me know way more. So the comedians who are making fun of the critic, they know way more than I do. Mark Maron knows way more than I do. Jason Ziniman knows way more than I do. That guy Cliff that wrote the book this month knows way more than I do. I am not claiming to be any kind of expert, just a dude in a basement who likes talking about this stuff. I thank you all for listening. While I'm doing all this, let me thank the members. They've been on buymeacoffee.com. These are the recurring members. They are Tommy and Andrea and Gary and Shannon and Mike and Kenny. And Kenny's always trying to get me to switch coffee brands. Kenny, man, I get too wired on that green cup one. I can't do it. And some other folks have made donations, including Scott and Becky and Kara and Dan and JB. And thank you all. If you would like to support the show, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/dailycomedynews. All right, the rest of the show, and we're a little long here today, but just some awkward stuff. Let's start on Gossip Corner. Taylor Swift. Happy birthday yesterday, Taylor. Hope Taylor had a nice day. If you want to keep up on Taylor, we've got a sister podcast called Taylor Swift Today. It's like this, except not like this at all. It only talks about Taylor Swift, but today there's an overlap. Taylor Swift attended a comedy show that featured comedian Ramy Yousef, which benefited a Gaza charity. And here's where the controversy is going to start. This was on Friday night. Taylor was with Selena Gomez. They were spotted walking into the Brooklyn Academy of Music in New York City. Vogue confirmed it was a good old-fashioned girls' night out. Both Swift and Gomez opted for the miniskirt and tall boots combo for their evening out at Ramy Yousef's stand-up show, benefiting ANERA. ANERA is the American Near East Refugee Aid charity that provides humanitarian aid to refugees and vulnerable communities in Palestine and Lebanon. Ramy Yousef posted on Instagram that 100% of the proceeds for the remainder of his tour will be donated to ANERA. Megyn Kelly has chimed in, and she's calling for a boycott against Taylor Swift. Megyn Kelly on her show said that Taylor owes Israelis and Jewish Americans an apology for attending the event. Megyn says, I hope they boycott Taylor Swift's events until she issues it because attending this thing was wrong. Do some Googling. See what they do in Gaza to gays. See about women's rights in Gaza, Taylor. Otherwise, do this, and then motions to shut up. When it comes to talking about those issues again, you clearly know nothing. This isn't a political show, and I'm a little off. The point here was Taylor went to a comedy show, and this has turned into a thing here. I'm undereducated on the entire issue. This next story is horrible. Originally, I left it out. Then when I went for a second pass of preparing today's show, I see it's the number one story in comedy. From the New York Post, a U.S. comedian and activist was abducted and killed after trying to meet a woman he found on social media in Colombia. Toger Zhang, hope I said your name right, an Asian American living in Minnesota, was on vacation in Colombia. The plan was to spend the holiday season with family. He came into contact with a woman he met on social media. He planned to meet her on December 10th, but was attacked and kidnapped by a group of men around 7 p.m. local time. The comedian called a friend in Colombia saying that these men had demanded $2,000 in cash for his release. He told his friend, who filed a police report, that he was being held at gunpoint. Hours earlier, police were at the apartment Zhang had been staying at because a woman was taking items from the residence and ran off before police could arrest her. Zhang's body was found lying in a ravine with over a dozen stab wounds and multiple bruises caused by an apparent fall from over 60 feet. Horrible. My favorite actor, Andre Braugher, passed away at age 61. I'm 54. I can't believe when he was on Homicide: Life in the Street, he was only 7 years older than me when he was playing Pembleton. I mean, always 7 years older than me, you know what I mean? But I think I was a teenager watching that show, and I was just absolutely great actor. Andre Braugher passed away on Monday, age 61. Terry Crews, who co-starred with him in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, said, "Can't believe you're gone so soon. I'm honored to have known you, laughed with you, worked with you, and shared 8 glorious years watching your irreplaceable talent. This hurts. You left us too soon." Joe Latruglio from that same show said, "So many wonderful stories will be told about Andre for now, but all my love goes to his wife and his 3 boys, who he loved very much and flew back every weekend from the show to be with." What you probably didn't know is that Andre could sing, too, and often did at lunch, belting bassy vocals from his dressing room to whatever new music he found. At first it was odd because, well, it was Andre Braugher crooning at full volume behind closed doors, but then very quickly it made all the sense in the world because the man was so full of song, and that's why the world took notice. I miss him so much already. If you're underfamiliar with Andre's work, go on social media and type his name in and add the word Homicide and watch some of the clips. He was just fantastic. And that's your comedy news for today. See you tomorrow.